Hello and welcome back to Pixel Street Videos. Today, me and Will are going to be reviewing episode 3 of the Halo TV series on Paramount Plus. This episode's called Emergence. As always, we're going to start off spoiler free and then kind of give a warning when we're going to go into the spoilers and give sort of a synopsis of what happened the entire episode. Will, so let's just it's so hard to talk about it without spoiling anything.
It is.
So
It really
it's
is.
it's really gonna be like a 2 to 3 minute conversation about what we thought of the episode overall. So yeah, Will, what did you think? I guess as a whole of this episode.
As a whole, I felt like half of it felt like filler, and the other half was introducing characters and doing a little bit more world building. But overall, not a bad episode. Still feels more like Mass Effect than it does Halo. Oddly enough, with the music that they've been putting in, but it's getting there. I can feel
Yeah,
at least the foundation that they're putting down.
yeah, we talked a bit. I think after we recorded last week about how it was kind of Mass Effect-y, and
Hmm.
people were even saying that this actor looks like Shepard, like if they made a
Hmm.
Mass Effect TV show when he takes off the Master Chief armor, which is pretty
Hmm.
funny. Um, but yeah, this is very much similar to me as the last episode, where it's just kind of more world building, and
Hmm.
like kind of showing us who all these characters are. So I mean, I thought last episode was really good. I think this episode was pretty good as well. I hope that the next episode isn't more of the same, where it's just kind of, that sci-fi, like, just let's talk about all of this future
Hmm.
tech slash, historic tech, all this, like,
Hmm.
stuff. Um, because it's starting,
Backstories and
yeah,
yeah.
it's starting to get boring, I guess. Like, it's fine. I understand it. They have to explain what all of this shit is to people who don't have never played any of the Halo games, or they have and they don't care about any of the story of it.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think that it's gonna get stale really quick if we have like one
If
or
there's
two
one,
more episodes
it's
in
gonna
a
start to
row.
lose me. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, okay. So that's just like a quick synopsis of what we think of the episode.
Mhm.
So now we are gonna go into full spoilers. So hide your kids, hide your wife. We spoiling everything out here.
Yep.
Um, so the episode starts. Hold on, I have the episode. What's happening? I have the episode up so I can kind of skim through it to remember like the order in which things
Mhm.
happen. Um, hold on. Will, tell us where we left off last episode. I got these.
Bless you. Good
Where
mute.
did last episode end?
So last episode ended with, well, gosh, sorry, I've been thinking a lot about this episode. So last episode ended with Cortana being hinted at. Um, at least Halsey kind of playing her game of chess with the upper brass of the UNSC, just going ahead and saying, "Oh yeah, this other lady Parangaski, Admiral Parangaski, I think that's how her name is pronounced. Yeah, she's totally in with me creating Cortana, and it's going to help the chief and better us as a species and further our technological position in the galaxy." I don't know how they wanted to word it there, but she's playing her own game, and you can get a lot of those vibes within this episode as well. That's where we were left off, is the introduction of Cortana and the potential incoming of the human character in the Covenant, Mackie. She was prepping with the three prophets and what we assume is the Arbiter, saying like, "Hey, let me blend in and go find this artifact that the chief found," or they're already calling him demon, which I think is a bit premature, but um so yeah, that's where we were left off from last episode.
Okay, and I'm gonna just pick up from there. This episode starts. We see a flashback on some like I don't know what the planet is, but it's clear that they're just using the people that live here as slaves, right?
Hmm.
Um, and they're slaves, and it looks like they're like rummaging through like wreckage or like debris of
Hmm.
whether it's like some previous war or I don't know what it is. Um,
Scavengers, yeah.
yeah, and they are you know being forced to do this, and it's like a little girl and a little boy. They're talking, and then they go to kiss, and then some guy's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And because they found a book, right? And the little boy's reading the book to her. I say little boy, but really they're like, between like 12 and 16, something like that. Like they're not old.
In around that range, yeah.
Yeah, they're younger, like young teens, but yeah, and then they just straight up fucking murder this child, this boy, right? Like it was very brutal.
Yeah.
Very brutal. I was like, okay, they're gonna get caught and like, get in trouble. No, this man is dead.
Yeah.
And then they try catching her, but then the Covenant shows up, right? They're dropping in. And so it's kind of like mayhem going on because some people are realizing that the Covenant are there, and some people are just trying to chase this girl to kill her. But she's running with the book. Well, she takes the book from the boy when he dies right next to her and runs. So yeah, the Covenant are using some sort of spear thing that's glowing, which I don't quite get, but it's glowing and it's like telling them where to go. And they're like, "Oh, it's this way, this way." And then they get to the girl, and they're like, move that human or whatever, like the one elite says. And then he's like, "No." And then like they realize that she's what they're there to get. And so then we now know that is, what's her name?
Mackie,
I'm bad at names.
I think.
Mackie. We now know that that's Mackie, and they're there to get her because she can interact with this Forerunner technology that they've been finding. So yeah, that happens. Hold on, I'm skimming through more. Sorry, order of events in this like gets all over in my head just because I know what happened.
Bounce.
I know what happened. It's just a matter of how it happens.
Right.
So yeah, and then we cut over to Halsey talking to her clone, right? And her clone's just asking like, "Oh, what's the plan?" And then Halsey's basically like, "Oh, we're gonna use your brain and insert it into Cortana to have this AI." And that's pretty much that. And then she talks to John, the Master Chief, which like I realized this episode why they showed his face so early, because a lot of this stuff, like, it would have been weird if she was just talking to some dude in a suit, right?
Yeah, it would have. It would have been very weird. He would have to emote but hold it back in a way.
Yeah,
if his helmet was on.
Exactly. Like, it would have been weird for her to like have these deep conversations with him and not like see expression or anything, or like in the scene when they implement Cortana into him, which we'll get to in a little bit, and like he's just laying there in a whole bodysuit. Like that's not. But anyway, so now we're getting to the point to where they're implementing Cortana into the Chief, and so Halsey's clone is laying there, and then like this weird dude, like who the fuck is this guy? It's like her assistant, and you can tell like he's like you have like the most brilliant mind like ever. And
very
like clearly
vibes
he's
from this guy.
yeah, and then he like gets close to her and is like about to kiss like Halsey's clone, who's like strapped down to a table, and then Halsey
fully
like
conscious too.
yeah, and then Halsey walks in, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, we're ready." And like it's like so creepy, and I'm surprised like the clone didn't say something.
To the story though.
Yeah, I know. I don't know where it's going. Like, is this dude gonna freak out and kill Halsey at the end because like she doesn't accept his sexual advances? It's like so it's so out of left field. This little scene, I don't know. I want to see where it goes. Like if it doesn't go anywhere, then it's like, what the fuck are you guys doing? It's like, oh, this Halsey's assistant just loves her for some reason.
We need to add an extra couple 15 seconds to this episode to get into that full hour. What can we add in? I don't know. How about a creepy guy?
Yeah. When I saw that, I literally just started laughing out loud. So yeah, so we see the creepy guy, very weird, not sure why that's a thing. I hope it comes back in the future, but I also hope it doesn't. If that makes any like, I hope it comes back so that it's like they didn't just do that for nothing, but I hope it doesn't come back just because it was super fucking weird.
Right, like sow the seeds of your later story early on, which I'm hoping that's what that is. But if it's not, you're right. Like this, why is this here? Why is this like added in at all?
But anyway, they pretty much hit go on this whole sequence, right? And in doing so, a needle comes out, a robotic needle, and just hovers over Halsey's clone's eye and just goes straight in. And that whole time I was like,
Dead
cringing because
Space 2. Oh
it was just
gosh.
sitting there. It was just sitting there for a solid like
Mhm,
20 seconds. I was like, wait, are they actually gonna show it go in? And yeah, they did.
mhm.
It went in.
Oh yeah.
And it pretty much extracted like her brain more or less, right? Like it didn't suck
Mhm,
her brain out physically, but like the knowledge that's within the brain, um, was brought in. And then it comes out on this little pedestal thing that literally looks like the chip that they use in the games,
mhm.
right? That's what it looked like.
Very similar, yeah.
And then they just grabbed like this little like microchip thing out of the center of it. Um, and then they go over to John, and John's in a different room on a different table. And then they pretty much use this like, it's like a really tiny drill bit thing, and it just like goes in the back of his head. Like
Mhm,
fuck, that would hurt. And like they show like X-rays, like a kind of like an MRI of what's happening, and it's literally just going through to like the center of his brain. I
mhm.
don't know how that would work in real life, but more
You
power
would
to
die.
him.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a part I had an issue with personally because this is drastically different than the way AIs work in the video games,
Yes,
right?
very.
The AI in the video game is just like a chip thing that is like placed like within your helmet, or I don't know if it's ever in any other part of the armor, but yeah, it's very weird because it's just like full on implemented in his brain and is with him
Mhm.
forever. You have to
Well,
assume.
it is supposed to be a removable chip that is inserted like a memory card in the back of your helmet, which goes a little bit into the back of your head. At least in the games, they have like the back of Keys, the back of Lord Hood. They've got these like metal plates right here at the base of the skull for AI integration. And it's
Could
supposed to
be,
be for military secrets and keeping things like safe and secure more or less. That's why in Halo
yeah.
1 they say you have to get Cortana off this ship. If they capture her, they'll learn everything. So
It
I don't
could
know why
be
they decided to show it that way by like, oh, we're just now putting the stuff inside of John's head and he's the first to get it.
It
But
could be like that. That's what I was gonna say. It could just be that this is the first implementation of this, right?
right,
So
yeah.
maybe he's the test dummy, and that's how they're doing it. And in the future, I don't know. Maybe they can then place that thing on the back of somebody's head that connects to it. That way, it
Mhm.
is just a chip that can be hot swapped out. But it still in my head doesn't make sense because like in the games when Cortana hacks a terminal, Chief pulls her out right on the chip and
Mhm.
puts the chip into a machine to
Yeah.
hack like a Covenant terminal or something. And in the show, Cortana hacks a door at one point, and it's just like he doesn't have to do anything. He just stands
Yeah,
there and
she
says, "Can
just
you hack
looks at
that?"
it.
Yeah. Granted, they are on like a UNSC property, so that could be
Yeah,
it.
she's connected to the
But
Wi-Fi. Yeah.
she's connected to the Wi-Fi. But I guarantee you, she does something similar, like with Covenant tech in the
Yeah.
future of this season. So they implement that, and then Halsey's like, "Do you want to meet her?" And then he's like, "No."
No,
I
I
thought that
really
was hilarious.
this was not this was against my will. I do not agree with this 100%.
Well, hold on. First, Halsey meets her, right?
Yes,
Because
yes.
John's still like, knocked out from, that good juice.
Yep.
Um, and so Cortana comes out and Halsey's like explaining to her, what's happening. Like, I'm only giving you so much percent of the ability to read this artifact because, for protection, like protective purposes, right? Like,
Mhm.
Cortana's a test dummy, more or less. They don't know what she's going to do. Um,
Exactly.
so it's more so to protect everybody, more so than it
Mhm.
is to protect like John from something.
Yeah.
Because Cortana could
There's a
freak out.
there is a weird subplot that I'm not really liking all that much, and they hinted at it last time and they talked about it this time as well. She's telling like the board of directors of the UNSC more or less that Cortana is meant to take full bodily control of the chief. And giving him a direct order means giving a computer a direct order, which means it will follow it. And I, they, or at least Cortana references like, why can't I control John right now? I was like, well, I'm restricting your access to him so that you can develop, I guess, a relationship with him so that he'd be okay with having his body surrendered to her. Not anywhere remotely close to any story that Halo has ever told in regards to AI integration. So I'm not sure.
it's also possible that Halsey's lying, right?
True.
It's possible Halsey's
She's a
lying and
liar.
they don't, and Cortana does not have the ability to do that. It could be that that's the lie she had to tell to get them to agree to this program.
True.
Um,
Very true.
Also, very weird that like they extracted Halsey's clone's brain, and then they're just like, "All right, bye, body," and like threw her in some milk, and she was good
They
to
went all
go.
Breaking Bad on her. They just dissolved her in a bucket.
Yeah. So yeah, the chief meets Cortana, and he's just kind of like, "All right, whatever, lady." And then he asked Halsey like, "How like how do I turn her off? Like outside of combat or in the field, how do I turn her off?" And then it's kind of just like silent, or Halsey doesn't really answer him because we know the
Right.
answer. He can't get rid of her.
No.
It's always gonna be in his brain. But then we cut over to the comet world, right, where we see Quan.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the dude's name?
Soren.
Soren. And she like gets into a little argument with him, saying like, "Hey, I want to go to my people. I need to get to my people." And he's like, "Yo, fuck you. Like, what? I'm not taking you anywhere. Like, yo, you're lucky I'm even letting you live with me, let alone
Right.
you trying to get me to take you off this like rock." And then she's like, "Well, give me a ship." And he just starts laughing.
Yeah.
Like, are you
Like,
kidding
no,
me?
we're not going to give you a spaceship.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and then she like runs up calling him an asshole and stuff. And he's
Mhm.
basically like, "The only reason I'm not killing you right now is because I have respect for John and
Mhm.
he brought you here for a reason." Um, and then and then she says like, "Oh, my family's super rich. Like we can give you, I forget what she says they can give him, but like it's something valuable, right?"
Yeah.
And so he immediately changes his mind. Here's what I think: she's completely bullshitting him.
Yeah.
Like
Of course.
she doesn't have money. She just wants to get there, and then she's gonna be like, "Fuck this guy. He was gonna keep me captive on this asteroid."
Yeah.
Um,
But here's the story, her subplot that I don't understand. She at the very beginning of the first episode was complaining about wanting to get off that planet. And now that's all she wants to get back to. Her
is
family's dead.
is
It's
it the
just to
same
go.
planet she wants to get back to? Right.
Yeah, same one. Same planet,
So so
Madrigal. And it's just to
she's trying
fight
to get to like a
the
different
uprising
tribe.
of whatever that guy, that creepy looking guy from Pacific Rim. Oh gosh, I forget it. I forget the actor's name. It'll come to me later. But that dude has had a tiny subplot pop up in every episode where he's like leading a group of insurrectionists against their entire planet to take control of it, more or less. And she's like, "Oh, I have to go help my friends and family," but all of her friends and family died in the first episode. She was the sole survivor. So I don't understand her arc. She's got to be either hiding something or it's bad writing, one of the two.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, either way, that happens, and then Soren agrees to take her, and then we see them leaving. I don't know if that's the exact order in the episode. That might happen a little later, but that's where we're gonna end it for them.
That
Like,
was like all that they had in this episode.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was very small. Cut back to John and Cortana. He starts trying to remove the chip from his back that Soren had brought up that kind of like makes them not feel emotion as much.
Mhm.
Um, and then we see Cortana reporting to Halsey, like pretty much she's a spy, right?
Yeah.
She's
Oh yeah.
there to tell Halsey everything that John is doing at all times. And Halsey says, and then Cortana says, "Do you want me to stop him?" And Halsey says, "No, like let him do it. Like we need him to trust you." Because
Yeah.
it makes sense if she's going to control his thoughts and what he needs to do, he has to trust her.
Yeah.
And right now he doesn't give a fuck about her at all. Um,
No.
so she pretty much guides him like exactly where to cut his back open to get this thing out,
Mhm.
this little microchip, and then immediately he can start like he walks outside, right, and he just starts like looking up
Mhm.
at the sky at ships and stuff. Like it's like he went from, I don't know, like not hearing anything to hearing everything all at one time. So
Mhm.
it's like sensory overload for him.
Yeah.
Um, Goes outside and Cortana's like, "This train goes here and here. Where do you want to go?" And he just doesn't say anything. He just gets on it. Um,
Wherever I get off, that's where I'm going.
but anyway, then he goes and he watches some people play some instruments, listens to music. Um, some kid's like, "Hey, that's my ball." It's like a little
Yeah.
soccer ball or something.
Yeah.
He just like throws it
Let's
to him.
bring the soccer ball to a small concert in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then the dog comes in, and that like triggers a core memory for him.
Yeah, the dog comes in and it triggers one of the flashbacks he saw when he was touching the
Mhm.
artifact, and he immediately beelines it right to the room where the artifact is, and asks Cortana, like, "Can you open this for me?" And then Cortana asks Halsey, "Should I open it?" And then Halsey's like, "Yeah, do it." And then she opens the door for him, and they go in. He immediately just like grabs this artifact like with as much surface area on his hands as possible, and he sees more of his memories. He can like feel more of them, and he kind of sees like what planet they're on, like what it looks like. He can observe a little more, right? And then he sees him and his dad in the yard burying stuff, and then the last thing he sees is him showing his mom a sketch. In the sketch was this artifact,
Mhm.
um, or at least a similar looking artifact. And so it comes out, and he tells Cortana, "You're like, yo, we gotta go get this other one." And they start heading back to Halsey, and then cut over to, fuck, what's her name, Mackie.
Mhm. This
Um,
was probably the most interesting part of the episode, in my opinion, aside from the introduction of Cortana with Jen Taylor voicing it, which, if it wasn't her, I feel I would be completely disconnected from that character entirely. But thankfully, they
yeah,
got that. Mackie puts out a distress call from the inside of a Corvette class Covenant vessel straight out of
yeah,
Halo Reach, which I thought was a nice little touch.
yeah. So she puts out this distress call, and then one of these UNSC ships, I forget what it was called. He said the name of it
Oh,
at one point.
he did.
Gladiator, something like that.
Something along those lines, yeah.
But
It
anyway,
was a very short name.
they get the distress call, and they start talking to her like, "Oh, what happened?" She makes up this story of, my whole village or something was captured by these Covenant, and they abandoned ship because of one reason or the other, because they can read the like the temperatures on the ship, and they say like, "Oh, there's like very minimal like thermal like
Mhm.
organisms on there, and their
The
ships are
engines are
all,
off, and yeah,
yeah,
like
everything's off,
it's floating.
yeah." And then so they like send her a pod, and then of course she like hangs up the distress call and like looks up, and then it's a hunter, Will. That's a fucking
Mhm.
hunter right next to her.
Yep.
You don't see the whole thing. You only see like part of
Nope.
his leg. They're teasing
You,
us.
you hear a little bit of what I caught was the audio from Halo Infinite. The hunter growl from that was the exact same in the show. They just straight ripped the audio from it. You see and hear the footstep, and then it just cuts to the life pod, which was straight out of Halo 1. It was the same
Yeah.
life pods coming in to go bring her back to the UNSC ship.
Yeah, and I think that then we cut back. Oh no, no. So the pod comes in. They ask her, some questions. They get her on the ground to make sure she doesn't have any weapons or anything on her. And then of course all of the worms come in, right? Like what are they
Yep.
called? What are they technically called?
Let go low.
Okay.
It's
Well,
yeah.
the worms. The worms come in,
The
right?
hunter worms, yeah.
Yeah, and they just start like they're everywhere. They're killing all of these UNSC Marines, the commander, everybody that's there. And this is one of the issues I have is like they were shooting all the worms. Nobody was shooting her, and she was just
Yeah.
walking down the middle of the room, just like walking
Mhm.
slowly. Nobody even thought to shoot this bitch. Um, and also like was everybody on the ship in that room because she just like takes over
Apparently.
right then and there. Um,
Small crew, small crew.
Small crew. So then basically, I think she like she captures the commander of the ship and asks like, "Well, like, where's the artifact?" And he's like, "I don't fucking know." Like, and then she's like, "Well, where's your home base?" And he's like, "I won't tell you anything." But like, we know she's gonna find out just by like going into like the command module of the ship,
Yeah.
and like seeing either where it's been or it'll probably be in there somewhere. Um, then we cut back to the chief. He goes and tells Halsey what he saw. Saw that there is another artifact similar to the first one, and he wants to go get it. And talks to Cortana. He said, "Yo, I think that it's on a planet that has like ice rings around it. How many planets have that?" And Cortana's like, they narrow it down to three, right?
Yeah.
So I think their plan is to go to one of them because of some Reach initiative that took place there.
Mhm.
That they were like testing putting life forms on planets that were what's the word I'm looking for?
Inhabitable.
Inhabitable. Yeah, sorry, brain fart.
Yep.
It basically by putting in a dome type thing and letting
Yeah.
them live within that on the planet, and that failed because a virus reached
Hmm.
the planet from Reach. Right? Didn't they say it was from Reach?
Uh, I think they just said an outer world ship came in and brought with it a virus, and they had to quarantine everybody. Um,
Yeah.
I think they didn't really dive too much into it, and I think Cortana is not having full access to what actually went down there. Now, this is very far off from the books, from what I've gathered. But again, this whole thing has just been fan fiction evolved. Um, so we'll see what story they spin.
Yeah,
Um,
and so the virus basically wipes out the colony. Cortana said that survivors were taken, here, and he's like, "What about my parents?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, they're dead, pretty much."
yeah, she completely dodged the question, and then
Yeah,
she stopped talking.
yeah. Um, so then, cut to the chief. He goes to Silver Team, starts talking to them, and then Cortana just appears out of nowhere, and they're like, "What the
Mhm.
fuck?" And then
And then Chief's like
she
all
she
embarrassed, like, "Shut up, go away."
yeah, he's like shut up, and then he's basically like go gadget stop, like, like trying to get her to go away. You're embarrassing me in front of my friends, but they're just like,
Yeah.
what the fuck is going on? Like, and they're like, is she inside of you? Like, where did that come from?
Mhm.
Um,
And
and
he
then
just
they
looks at him and goes, "New AI."
and then they break up, and one of the Spartans, she's like very weary on the whole situation, like looking at him as he's walking away, like what the fuck are they doing to you, man? Like, this isn't
Yeah.
cool. Um, let's see, hold on, I'm skimming through. This is when he's telling Halsey he needs to go there. Oh, we completely missed. We're out of order. He doesn't take the thing out of his back until later in the episode. I was
Yes.
completely out of order.
Yeah.
Um,
That what we were just talking about happened before that,
yeah. So
I think.
I
Yeah.
called it. Will we saw the
Mm.
Master Chief's ass? We saw him
We did.
naked when
You
he was
called
taking
it,
that thing
and
out of his
I
back.
didn't want to believe it.
When he was taking that thing out of his back, you see full backle nudity. Um, but yeah, so this is when he has that interaction with the ball, and then, or no, yeah, this is when he has the interaction with the
Mhm.
ball and stuff, and then he
Then
touches
he
the
goes and
thing.
touches the artifact. He sees all those memories, and then they go
Yep.
to Eridnus 2, or at least they depart for Eridnus 2, which actually that is correct. That is the planet that Chief grew up on as a kid and was kidnapped from in the books and the games. So at least they got that right.
Yeah. And then Mackie talks, to the fuck the prophets, pretty much saying like, I'm gonna find out where this is, like, successful so far to get, to infiltrate their shit.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then they depart to go to the chief's home planet and try and find this other thing. One thing we should bring up is that, what is her name? Like Parovsky or something you said? Paralovsky?
Parangaski, something along those
Parangaski.
lines.
Um, she is talking to Miranda Keys saying like, "Hey, we want you to look at this tech." And then they're like, "Oh, but she's like, "Oh, but does Halsey know?" Cuz like Miranda Keys is aware that Halsey is getting dibs on this tech. And
Yeah.
Paragonsky or whatever her name is, she pretty much says like, "No, we're going to, work on the side." And then
Hmm.
and then Miranda's like, "She's not going to like that." But like,
Yeah.
I'm in cuz fuck
Mhm.
her, right?
And then
So
Captain
yeah,
Key
that's
says, "She's leaving planet. You've got a few days. Be quick."
yeah. So yeah, that ends episode 3. Overall, I thought it was good. More of the world building. We kind of see what's happening. The chief wants to go back to his home planet. See what was buried. If it was you know, that, um,
Secondary artifact of some
yeah,
kind.
that other artifact. I mean, we know it's gonna be there in some form or another, whether it's he
Yeah.
finds out somebody took it and then they chase them down, or
Hmm.
they actually find it. But yeah,
I will
it's
say
gonna
the
be.
ship that they leave on is the same ship from the very first trailer that we got. And when it's flying over what looked like the Halo 3 arc portal things in the trailer. Um, so my guess is obviously we're going to see that shot in the next one, but it gives us kind of an idea of what that planet actually does look like now that it's been quarantined and abandoned, according to Halsey.
Yeah.
So we'll
Yeah, I'm
see.
definitely. The next episode's going to be interesting. I hope there is more action than the last two have been, but it is seeming like it's going to gear up to be more of the same kind of world building. Because you know that there's going to be some flashbacks of the chief while he's there,
Oh yeah.
and all this other stuff. Um, so yeah, what did you think of episode three? Given that you could talk about the spoilers of it now.
Overall, I thought it was okay. I'm only going to give it a slight step higher than episode 2 only because of the introduction of Cortana. I feel like they did it a little bit better. They were cyberbullied a little bit from the first reveal trailer where they showed Cortana. It just looked wrong. And
Yeah,
they added a little bit more blueness to her in the show. But bringing in Jen Taylor to do the voice and actually get the mannerisms and the inflections of what Cortana is supposed to sound like, if it wasn't for that, I'd say this episode would be a step below the previous one. Overall, decent. Not the
yeah,
greatest. Where I want to get more of that action that we saw at the very beginning of the first episode where
yes,
limbs are flying off, people's heads are exploding.
yeah.
I
I
need to
think
see
a
more of
good
that.
I think a good mix for an episode would be like half that, half this, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm kind of hoping the next episode starts off slow, and then maybe Mackie or the a Covenant fleet find out that they're there, and
Yeah.
then we see some action.
I'm going to predict that we're going to see a hunter next episode, not just the footstep of it. They're going to be back in their full armor and she's going to provide an assault on somebody of some kind. We'll see. Maybe. I hope.
Yeah. Yeah. Overall, impressions are still high on the show. I think it's a lot better than I expected it to be. Um, I guess we'll have to see overall where the show ends up at the end. But
Yeah.
yeah, let's finish by saying where we think the season's gonna end off. I went first last time, Will, so you can
Mhm.
go. Now that we're another episode in, where do you think the season season one ends?
Well, we're a third of the way through the season already. There's going to be 9 episodes. Not a huge amount of events have happened in the first 3 aside from just the initial episode telling us here's what's happening in the world and then a couple world building and introducing and building these characters up a little bit. I honestly think that at some point Reach is going to be invaded, and I'm hoping the last episode is them finding Halo. I honestly, if they're gonna do anything, leave us with a traditional Halo styled cliffhanger. Let's get to Halo, crash land on it,
Oh
roll credits.
God! Don't
Roll
even tease
credits.
me like that, Will. Crash land on it. Yeah, that would be insanely awesome. But
Mhm.
I'm kind of optimistic that that'll happen. I don't think it will. Cautiously optimistic, that is.
Yeah.
Um, I do think that Reach will get invaded, especially now that we see that Mackie is taking over UNSC's ship. I think
Yeah.
she's going to realize that that artifact is on Reach, and that's what's going to force the invasion to come.
Yep.
Is whether maybe Mackie tries to get it and then they find her and capture her, so then that forces an invasion, or if Mackie tells them like, "Yo, it's here, let's go kill these bitches and take it from them."
Right.
So yeah, I
She's
definitely think
still
Reach.
young and impressionable and just indoctrinated by the Covenant and only has memories of humanity from her horrible existence as a slave on planet trash, whatever you want to call it.
Planet
So
trash.
I fully agree that she is going to be the forefront of the invasion on Reach.
Cool. Well, that sums up our review of episode 3 of the Halo TV series. Let us know what you think of the show so far in the comments below. Um, Yeah, stay tuned right here to Pixel Street Videos for more podcasts, Let's Plays, reviews, and Halo nerd shit, you know? We'll be back here next week with a review of episode 4 of the Halo TV series.